You are listening to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I am your host, Alison Price. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about mythological astrology and the badass goddesses with my friend Arwynne O'Neill.
Hi, Alison. Yes, we will.
So, Arwynne, I'm super happy to have you back again. And basically, you do, as I understand it, you do astro art. And particularly, you've got some artworks up of goddesses. And I wonder if you could just, before we get started on that, if you could just explain to us how you got into art in the first place.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to. So when I was a child, my grandmother was an artist, and she did everything from painting portraits to caricature art. She lived in Hawaii for a while, and on Waikiki Beach, she actually did caricatures of tourists and anyone who would pass by, and she was quite a little celebrity. And in the time, you know,
Wow.
People would come by and she would entertain them for however long it takes to do a little caricature sketch of them. But she was classically trained. She went to art school and she could paint, did beautiful oil paintings. By the time I came around as, a grandchild, she had been living as just a sort of a self-sustaining artist for decades. And so I was just inspired, by a very early age to sort of hang out in her studio with her and draw. As soon as I could grip a crayon, I was drawing at a little small easel while she painted at her big easel. I mean, I was always interested in just drawing people. That was always my thing because that's what she mostly drew and painted. Women for the most part, because my family was mostly my mother, my grandmother, and I. That's just
Right.
what you see, basically, what you know. I can't really draw men very well to this day.
Okay.
I mean, if a man is in front of me, I will probably be able to draw him pretty well, but I can't draw one from memory very well, which sounds ridiculous, but it's just when you sketch, what comes to mind is just sort of a pinup girl-looking woman or a heroic sort of comic book-looking girl, or as the case may be now, badass goddesses. Yeah, so I went to art school and
Oh,
studied.
you did?
I went to art school, yeah. I wanted to do like fantasy, science fiction, graphic design art kind of thing. I never actually could have been a comic book artist because then you have to draw something other than people. You have to be able to draw buildings, and like landscapes and cityscapes and all kinds of spaceships and whatnot. And I really can't say that I could do that. But yeah, I found a niche.
So early on, you got straight into, is that figurative art? Is that what they
For
call
sure.
it?
Yeah, absolutely.
The female form, and why
Female form.
not?
Yeah, what's better than that, right? I always have to have a theme. This is me being a Virgo, and I have to have like an organized theme. So 12 signs, it's perfect. There's like,
Yes.
the characters are right there. And I used to collect astrology calendars that were done by like the greats in fantasy art, like Boris Vallejo, Frank Frazetta, comic book artists who were interested in astrology. So back in high school, I always had like these great mythological, like heroic figures on the wall,
Wow.
like Boris's latest astrology calendar he did them for years. I think they probably still are coming out now.
Or if they are, we'll
Yeah.
put a link down at the bottom.
And, if you take just one look at those, it's easy to see my inspiration. The models that I've been able to draw from in the last several years are, not bodybuilders like his models always were, but they were burlesque dancers. That was one of the inspirations for the badass goddesses, was something called Dr. Sketchies, which is something in a lot of cities across the world. It ended during COVID in Vancouver, unfortunately, but it used to be once a month you'd go and sit at a restaurant or a bar and draw these beautiful burlesque dancers who would pose for 3 hours, and you just sit there and eat and drink and talk and draw these wonderful models. And they were absolutely perfect subject matter for creating goddess art or astrology art based on their wonderful kind of poses and physiques and all of that.
So these particular art pieces that we're talking about now, they've been done in the recent 2 or 3 years. Is that? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, some of them are from a few years earlier because, as I said, COVID sort of shut down that whole thing. But I've been doing the Badass Goddess calendars for the last 5 years, like since 2018.
Amazing.
And I missed 1 year because of COVID, unfortunately. But I came back again last year, and now I've got a Redbubble shop with all of these. There's like 8 or 12 now, but they're being added to every day. And you can get different goddesses on coasters or t-shirts or handbags or.
And then for those who don't know, Redbubble is where you upload it's print on demand, and you upload your art.
Yeah.
And people can order things like basic greetings
Anything.
cards and
Coffee cups.
but
everything.
even wall art with your images of your goddesses.
Yeah, posters, wall art, notebooks, spiral books with the covers, all beautiful artwork.
Amazing.
Laptop sleeves. Yeah, it's a great site. I've actually found a lot of things other artists have done that I am definitely going to order.
Yes.
It's a great site, including yourself.
What I like about the print on demand business is that you're not creating a backlog of inventory sitting on somebody's shelf and using up resources. So that's what I particularly like about this. But that's just by the by. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I agree.
So we're going to be, I understand you've now got, each sign has its own goddess.
Yeah, well, they were pre-existing, but I've mapped them out pretty well. Some of them are better matches than others. But yeah, the badass goddesses, basically the way they came about is obviously goddesses, gods, in all the pantheons throughout the world, there are some amazing characters. I mean, most people know of a handful of like the Greek gods, Ares and Athena, and they're very famous, but every culture in the world has their own deities, and some of them are absolutely fascinating and amazing. I mean, the Aztec gods are incredible. Like there's one called the metal butterfly, and her name is Itzpapalotl, and she is this crazy like clawed butterfly who like will sneak up in the dark and like grab you and do bad things to you. And there's some wonderful fodder for art out there in all the different mythologies of the world.
So the goddesses that you are drawing here are actually from all different cultures. They're not just basically the Greek ones, which we all know of and love, I suppose.
Absolutely.
So that you're certainly exploring more, I want to say, obscure goddesses that certainly I virtually haven't heard of any of these.
Yeah.
And that's quite interesting too. And you've gone a little bit into the background, I understand, on quite a few of these.
Yeah, well, it started out as a calendar, obviously, so I would make sure in 12 months to have something from every little corner of the world. So it was always very spread out, and usually on the back of the calendar I would have an atlas that had a little arrow pointing to wherever they were from. So I would make sure that there was at least one from like Eastern Europe, one from like the North American native people, and one from maybe Australia or Japan, or kind of spread them out across the year. So yeah. That
is great. So if you have that image still, we can put it on our blog post as well to highlight these particular where these goddesses are coming from, which is kind of interesting as well. Yeah. Okay. And Arwynne, could you share with us a bit about the medium that you're working with in art?
Sure. So, like I said, I started out with crayons when I was 5 and working at the feet of my grandmother. I moved up to working in acrylics, but I never really got into that so much because it takes up so much space to paint in acrylics, as you know. Watercolor, all those things are messy and not really good for living in a small apartment as one does. So in college, I definitely explored a lot of different media. Charcoal was a lot of fun. When I was doing these life drawing classes, I would just take a set of just regular pencils, like soft pencils, and I would bring them home and scan them, and then upload them into Photoshop, where I would paint them digitally in Photoshop. So I'm using all the paint brushes in Photoshop to basically colorize them, and then add layers of photography behind them, because as I said, I don't draw buildings or spaceships, but I do have all of these wonderful resources of public domain photography, and also my own photography, and that of like some of my family members who are wonderful photographers whose artwork creates the backgrounds, which I then layer with a bunch of different things and extrapolate just graphically and kind of abstractize the backgrounds. So there's something interesting going on behind these beautiful goddesses.
Oh, that's great. So they are now coming out in digital form.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's start with the Zodiac, and we'll begin with the Aries.
Sure. So for Aries, I think the Amazons are a great fit. They were a tribe of warrior women from Greek mythology who lived in what is now the Ukraine. One of the most famous Amazons who fought in the Trojan War was Hippolyta. And no men were allowed among the Amazons. So the way they maintained their numbers was through annual quote-unquote visits to a nearby tribe of warrior males. And the baby girls resulting from these encounters, they raised as fierce Amazon warriors. And the male babies were returned to the village that their fathers came from, or sadly, possibly left to die in the elements. So,
wow.
Yeah, they were ruthless, but effective. Yeah, that's one I think is great for Aries. So the Aries warrior women. An alternative would be the Valkyries, and they were these wonderful Norse women who took the men up to Valhalla when they died. So a Norse warrior who died would then be taken by these beautiful Valkyries up to Valhalla, where they would drink and carouse and continue being warriors in the afterlife.
Oh.
So 2 options there for Aries. So this particular image, the Amazons, it's on a sort of a flaming reddish-orange background, and it shows one of the Amazon horsewomen with a bow and arrow, and she's sort of backlit against, or frontlit, the moon's behind her, let's say it that way.
Yes.
And they were horseback riding warriors. So she's on horseback, she's shooting a bow and arrow, and yeah.
It looks like she's riding bareback there, right?
The myth is that they were these, like half-naked. It's a war tactic, right? It's very distracting. Okay. You ride into battle half-naked, and men are going to be like, "What the?" And then before they know it, you've shot them. So
okay, so yeah. she's got a handy little weapon going there, and having a go at something that is quite a distinctive image.
Yeah. Available on laptop sleeves and coasters and T-shirts.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the second sign, which is Taurus. What do you have for Taurus?
Sure. So for Taurus, I've chosen Watamaraka, who is the goddess of evil in the Zulu pantheon. And not that I think Taurians are evil by any means, but these are badass goddesses. So they all have a dark sort of aspect to them a bit. She is the mother of all the world's demons. And the reason I've chosen her for Taurus is that she is, her mate is named Buru Matara, and he is a half bull, half crocodile creature the size of an elephant. And they rule over the land of darkness together. And they are the parents, I suppose, of all the world's demons. So in this image, she is holding up her hand, and the lightning is striking down around her, and she's covered in body paint, and she has this beautiful sort of bull's head next to her in the sky. It just it's got a bit of a Taurian sort of
it
feel
absolutely
to it.
has. It's hugely symbolic of Taurus. She's got a fabulous mane of hair there.
Yes.
And it's like she's got her feet firmly placed, but she's managing that lightning. Is that what the kind of thing is?
Absolutely, yeah. Lightning and thunder are one of her sort of symbols.
Wow, this is so interesting. So let's have a look at what you have for Gemini.
Yeah, so for Gemini, I've chosen Texet and Tia. They're the Haida of the Queen Charlotte Islands, gods of death. So it's a death god duality, actually. And they are the 2 gods who guard the portal between life and death through which all humans pass to reach the realm of the afterlife. Texet is the god of violent death, and Tia is the god of peaceful passing. So for everyone, it's one or the other. You either die peacefully or you die in battle.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that's why there's 2 of them, and that's why I chose them for Gemini.
It's very interesting. So do we get a choice, or do you think that they just happen to be there depending how you go?
Well, I mean, one would like to have a choice, but so many people say they want to die in their sleep. And I think, in many cultures, I think dying in battle or dying heroically was always
an honor, isn't it?
Yeah, that was always the preferred method. And, to die in one's sleep, as an ancient Roman or gladiator would have been sad and, dishonorable in a way. In fact, in Norse mythology, there are 2 different hells. There's Valhalla for the heroes, and then there's the sort of the sad hell, which is like for women and the elderly. It's like they don't even get to be with the warriors at the end. They just have to have this like sad sort of damp hell, which is it's like a swampy kind of like cold, miserable, dark place. And Valhalla is like bright and full of carousing warriors and voluptuous women and all the ale you can drink.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Wow, this is really becoming quite interesting. So, so what do we have lined up then for Cancer?
Well, for Cancer, obviously, she is the motherly sign. It is the sign of childhood and motherhood. So I've chosen Gaia, who is the Greek personification of the earth.
Okay.
So she was one of the very first Greek deities. She was born of the void of chaos, and she's the mother of the Titans, who preceded the gods of Olympus. So she's like the grandmother of Zeus, so to speak. Her offspring were Kronos and Rhea, who were the parents of Zeus. And they eventually overthrew the Titans, Zeus's generation did, and overthrew them and became the reigning gods. So Gaia's like in the family tree at the very, very top of all of the
She's the
Greek,
mother of all
the Greek gods, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so the picture, the painting is basically Gaia lying atop the earth. It's sort of the opposite of Atlas, where Atlas is like holding the earth up on his shoulders.
Okay.
Gaia is just sort of sprawled sideways on top of the planet Earth, and it's this beautiful NASA image of, which are all in the public domain, of course, beautiful NASA image of the planet, and it's sort of awash in this blue glow, and she's blue, and her hair is just sort of melding into the ice caps.
Very Cancerian.
Very Cancerian. Yeah, and she's pregnant. It's actually, this is one of the wonderful things too. I'm going to give a little shout out to one of the burlesque dancers who was a model. Her name is Ariel Helvetica, and she was pregnant when she posed for us at Dr. Sketchy's several years back. One of the most beautiful pregnant women you could possibly hope to see.
Wow.
Remember when Demi Moore posed on the cover of GQ? Yes, it was like that in person. Yeah, so she was a wonderful model, and she's the inspiration for Gaia, the mother of the Greek pantheon.
Swell.
Yeah.
Swell.
Yeah.
All right.
No pun intended.
So I'm dying to know what you've got lined up for Leo.
Yes, of course, Leo. Leo is personified by Bastet. She is the Egyptian cat goddess. Very fond of cats myself, so this is one of my favorites. Bastet was originally worshipped in the form of a lion, so the painting I have of her is her facing one direction and a beautiful lioness facing the other direction, sort of as bookends to each other, and against a wonderful field of kind of yellowish grain, which is very Leo in,
the
symbolic.
height of summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you say that's like Sphinx-like or not really?
A little, for sure.
Little,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, absolutely. And the Sphinx is very enigmatic. Is it a lion? Is it what is it exactly? And how old is it? The mystery continues. But as far as Bastet goes, she was obviously an Egyptian goddess, and the Egyptians were very fond of cats. They would mummify cats, and they had all kinds of symbology and
I believe so.
reliquary to cats. And her Bastet's status grew as cats were domesticated in Egypt, and her cult actually spread all the way to Italy, where her symbols and statuary have been found in the ruins of Rome and Pompeii, which is quite a spread for an Egyptian goddess.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is this one of the goddesses that is way, way back in time?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, the
It's one of
Egyptian
the
ones. Yeah.
one of the OG goddesses.
The OG goddesses.
Yeah,
Whoa.
OG badass. And if you don't like that one somehow as a Leo, if that doesn't satisfy all of your cravings for a Leo goddess, so if somehow Bastet isn't enough of a cat goddess for any Leos out there, I do have an alternative, and that is an Egyptian goddess named Sekhmet. Spelled Sekhmet, and she is the lion-headed Egyptian goddess of war. She was a protector of pharaohs in battle, and her name means the powerful one. Her father was Ra, the sun god, and he sent her to destroy his enemies. And once he unleashed her, though, he couldn't control her, and her thirst for blood could not be quenched. And she killed thousands and thousands, and
Wow.
and finally Ra tricked her. He made a river of beer and dyed it the color of blood to trick her into drinking it, which she did, and then she became intoxicated and finally ceased her murderous rampage when she was too drunk to continue killing.
That doesn't sound very Leo-ish to
Well,
me, but there
no.
you go.
She had the lion's head. I'm just throwing it out
the lion's head. Amazing.
there. Yes.
All right, well, moving on. Let's have a look at Virgo.
Yes, Virgo. We finally get to Virgo. So for Virgo, I've chosen Artemis. She's the Greek goddess of the hunt. She was the twin sister of Apollo and the daughter of Zeus and Leto. And Artemis rules the moon and childbirth, motherhood, but also virginity, which that's where we get Virgo. She is also the ruler of wild animals and hunters. So she took an oath of chastity, and then she also defended other people's chastity and her own with deadly force if necessary, which of course, back then you can never be too careful. She carried a bow and arrow, and she was known for defending her virginal followers to the death if need be. So anyone who made sacrifices to Artemis as their patroness, she would defend their virtue and their virginity and their chastity
very
to the death if necessary.
Very going.
Yes, exactly.
Could you talk a little bit about the image?
Sure. So Artemis is pictured with her bow and arrow, and she's in the forest. The moon is up in the corner, and there is a wolf sort of lurking in the background.
Ah.
Yeah. So she's the ruler of and the protector of animals, as well as the patroness of hunters. Just kind of a bit of a contradiction, seemingly. Yeah, we contain multitudes, we Virgos.
Oh, super. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting to the second half of the zodiac, and we are with Libra.
Yes. So Libra obviously is ruled by Venus. So Venus is the goddess of love and beauty in Roman mythology, also based on Aphrodite of the Greek pantheon. And Venus was born of the ocean, of the foam rising up from the severed testicles of the god Uranus. So that's a great origin story. They're badass goddesses, so there has to be a dark side, right? So you might not think that Venus has a dark side. Oh, but wait. She is not only the epitome of feminine charm, beauty, and irresistibility, but she is also vain and faithless, prone to jealousy, rage, and capricious violence. So one beautiful boy who did not return her affection was turned into a crab. She turned an entire island's worth of women blind because they refused to pay the right honor to her.
Gosh.
Love hurts. This is the buzzword for Venus.
Love hurts,
Love hurts, yeah.
So let's keep moving on. And then what do we have for Scorpio?
For Scorpio, we have the Egyptian goddess of magic and medicine known as Serket. And she was the ruler of magic, medicine, and poisonous creatures. She specialized in curing the venomous stings of spiders, snakes, and especially scorpions. Her totem is the scorpion, and she embodies both venom and its antidote. She was the chosen patroness of many pharaohs and their protector in the afterlife.
Gosh, that does sound very Scorpionic,
For sure,
doesn't it?
Absolutely. So the image here is of Serket sitting against a beautiful pyramid, and her shadow is a scorpion's tail, and she's holding an ankh for eternal
good
life.
measure.
Yeah, for good measure. Got to have something in that other hand. Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Gosh, this is getting so interesting. So let's have a look at what you've got there for Sagittarius.
Sure. So for Sagittarius, I've chosen Ayao, who is a Yoruba goddess in the Santeria pantheon. And pantheon just means the group of gods for each culture. So the Greek pantheon means all the gods in that family, in that system of belief. She is also an Orisha, which means that she's a spirit of the air. And she resides in the forest and in the eye of a tornado. So she's a fierce warrior who wields many weapons, including a crossbow, ergo Sagittarius, but also a quill and 9 stones. Interestingly, Sagittarius is the 9th sign.
Yes.
So that's just a coincidence slash happy accident. Yeah.
And do we know where Santeria is?
This is in Africa. So yes.
Oh, in Africa, okay.
Absolutely. She's one of the African Orishas. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of them. They're wonderfully depicted, actually, in the show American Gods. There are, I think, season 3, they had a bunch of Orishas.
Oh.
And I was very excited to see, that depicted in film.
All right.
Because I've done all this research, and all of a sudden when you see something that, you've obscurely sort of plucked out of the internet, and then you see it on TV, you're kind of like, oh, cool, yay.
Yeah, so the symbology is there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you talk us through the image a little bit?
For sure. So it depicts her against this beautiful tornado-like cloud, and she is holding a crossbow with her feet, and she's holding stones, 2 of 9 stones, of course, because the 9 are... She only has 2 hands, but they're held up in a strategic
position
thing to prevent me from getting demonetized on Redbubble, coincidentally. But yes, she's holding a crossbow with her toes. Very ambidextrous.
Very Sagittarian, yes.
For sure. Now, I don't have an alternate goddess for every one of the signs, but for a few of them, there's just, there are a couple of them that fit the bill so well. And so an alternate for Sagittarius, if somehow a Yao does not suit your fancy, is Marishiten, who is a Japanese goddess of war and victory. She was revered in the 9th century as the patroness of the samurai warrior class, and she is an absolutely fierce badass goddess. She has 8 blade-wielding arms, and one of them I have depicted with a crossbow. She is riding a cavalry of wild boars.
Right.
And she has also, in addition to all of that, if that wasn't enough, the power to render her armies invisible. So you're not going to beat her in battle. That's, yeah.
Gosh.
Marishiten. Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Let's get to the 10th sign. So that will be Capricorn.
Yes. So for Capricorn, I've selected a very interesting goddess. This is Astanatlehi, who is the Navajo and Apache goddess of time, creation, transformation, and immortality, known as the changing woman. And she becomes old and then walks towards the east until she sees her younger self coming towards her, and then she merges with her younger self and becomes young again and progresses through an endless stream of lives. So she's always moving east, she's always changing and renewing, but she never dies. And that, for me, is just...
Gosh, we'd all like that, wouldn't we?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's a lot of walking, though.
A lot of walking, but the time factor is very, very Capricornian.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, perhaps you could just walk us through your image there.
Absolutely. So there's a backdrop of the desert because Navajo and Apache, they were obviously in the southwest of the United States, and the changing woman is depicted in a number of different sort of versions of herself, from the young woman to the sort of voluptuous like woman in her prime to the older woman with the kind of robes a little bit more covering her body, but there's a few shadow sort of images that blend her in sort of an arc that she's constantly kind of moving from youth to age and back and forth.
Gosh, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, and getting to our penultimate one, we've got Aquarius, and what's the goddess you've got for Aquarius?
For Aquarius, I've chosen Sedna, and she is an Inuit goddess. She's the vengeful Inuit goddess of the sea. She's worshipped by hunters and fishermen who depend on her for their livelihood. She's also the protector of all of the ocean's creatures. So her story is a bit sad. As a beautiful young maiden, Sedna rejected all of the suitors who came for her. Her father, was trying to marry her off, and she just kept turning all the suitors away until a deceitful god came and tricked her into marriage. I believe it was Raven. Don't quote me on that. I don't want to, slander the Raven if it wasn't him, but I think it might have been. So he tricked her into marriage, and her father eventually sailed to her rescue, but was so terrified when her husband threw all of the ocean's rage at him and tried to capsize the boat. And the father was so frightened that he threw Sedna overboard. When she tried to cling to the side of the boat, he cut off her fingers. Yeah, it's awful. I know, it's awful. #MeToo. But anyway, she sank to the bottom of the ocean, and her fingers became whales and cetaceans, and and so after that she became the protector and the patroness of all the ocean's creatures. So for Aquarius, the oceanic goddess Sedna.
Wow, so that's symbolized by the actual Aquarian symbols of waves.
Yeah.
All right, and perhaps you could just talk us through the image there.
Yes, well, I mean, it's Sedna lying on the back of an orca whale in the depths of the beautiful green ocean.
Simple but meaningful. And of course, Sedna is now a planet. It can be picked up on AstroGold. It's not on all the... I don't know much about it personally, but I know it's definitely on the list of the modern planets.
Absolutely, yeah. And some people swear by including it in their charts.
And if you're an Aquarius, clearly you need to, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And now we've got to our final sign, which is Pisces. And just explain to us the goddess we have for Pisces.
Yes. So I've chosen Meng Po, also known as Lady Meng. And she is the Buddhist goddess of, her name means dream. She's the goddess who guards the door of the 9th Chinese hell, which she guards the door and she dishes out a mystic brew to all the souls of the dead. And the potion makes them lose their memory of their past life so that they can enter into their next life when they're reincarnated with a clean slate. So you don't have to reincarnate with all of your baggage. you drink this potion and you start over, and that's her job. So she has the potion of forgetfulness, and yeah,
it sounds very Piscean as well. Also, that you're moving from the very end into the beginning, as it were, and the fact that her name means dream is incredibly Piscean as well.
Incredibly, yes.
Yeah.
And so she makes sure that the only thing that your soul carries from one incarnation into the next is its karma, and which I'm calling spiritual metadata.
Right, spiritual metadata.
You can escape everything but your karma.
Or your spiritual metadata, it seems.
Exactly.
And the image we have here is...
Well, she's sitting on a dome, which... It's a kind of an interesting collage image. So she's got the potion in her hands and she's dishing it out, and there's this crazy, colorful sort of like potion-y sort of stuff flying around her, and she's sitting on this amazing dome of sort of fractal Buddhas. You kind of have to see it to understand what I'm talking about.
Great.
But yeah, it's a good collage image.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, that's quite a good one for Pisces, isn't it?
I think so.
So, Arwynne, these are some brilliant images that you've created here, and really, in a way, you seem to be attracted to the darker side of some of these goddesses. How would you relate that? Would you say that's the case, or?
Well, I do have Scorpio rising, so yeah.
So that explains everything.
I mean, well, I don't know if it explains everything, but it's a good shorthand for explaining everything. Basically, there are a lot, and obviously all art is amazing. Anyone who is an artist has my respect, etc., etc., etc.
I agree.
But there's a lot of goddess art that is just, it focuses only on the positive, and in all these pantheons of goddesses and gods, the focus has not always been on the light and the fluffy and the love and the nurturing, whatever. And especially with women, there are some pantheons where it's actually harder to find. Usually, I don't want to name any names, throw any pantheons under the bus, but there are some where all of the male characters get all the good, cool, juicy, badass stuff to do, and then the women are just like, oh, I tend the hearth, or I'm the goddess of childbirth. And not to say childbirth isn't hard, obviously,
but it seems as though you have sought out more dynamic, independent women who and even the goddesses we think of as sort of light and fluffy, like Venus, Aphrodite. I mean, if you read any of those actual myths, she did some terrible things in the name of love and beauty and grace. She struck an entire island of women blind. And Athena, she was born of the forehead of Zeus and blah, blah, blah. But she also struck Medusa for being assaulted by Poseidon in Athena's temple. So Athena came across Poseidon assaulting Medusa in her temple, and then struck Medusa with a curse. Not Poseidon. No, there's no #MeToo back then. So Medusa now is this horrible gorgon who turns men to stone with one glance at her. She's got snakes for hair. She used to be a beautiful maiden. And because Athena came across her in the temple being accosted by some god, she strikes her with this curse. So anyways, there's a lot of darkness to these stories, and I think that's kind of fascinating. And I thought it was neat to explore kind of the dark badass side of even some of these sort of lighter, fluffier. That's right. So speak, this really is playing into your Scorpio ascendant. For sure, super interesting. Yeah.
But there's also a lot. I mean, Wata Maraka, the goddess of evil. I mean, what's more badass than that? Or Marishiten, 9 boars that she rides, and she's got 8 arms, and they all have a weapon in them. That's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gosh, Arwynne. So, could you tell us a little bit about your actual body of work here and what you're developing in the future?
Sure. So I've been doing the BadAss Goddess calendars and creating these artworks since roughly 2018. So the first calendar came out in 2018. I missed a year due to COVID, and now I'm sort of back on the bandwagon. But now I'm uploading them to Redbubble, so they're going to be available on all sorts of products. That is a growing library of goddesses. And you can get them on any kind of product you want. And you can find that at redbubble.com/people/Ms. Pink Designs. And that link will be obviously in the show notes. So you don't have to remember it. I also have sort of an archive website at mspink.com where you can
Right.
find our podcast, our old podcast archived episodes, as well as my my calendar art.
Okay, so you're working on a new stuff this year and on into the future.
On into the
because
future.
this is what you do, badass
Yeah.
goddesses. And
Absolutely.
clearly, you haven't.
There are more badass goddesses out there to be drawn, to be brought to life. Yeah, yeah,
And you can shake a stick at.
yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
So, Arwynne, thank you so much for coming here today and sharing your badass goddesses with us and some of your process and some of the meaning behind your images. It's been really interesting to discover goddesses I've never even heard of, and I do appreciate you coming by today.
Thank you so much for having me, Alison. It's been great.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.